There are times in life when everything seems to have already been written. As we age, our bodies grow tired and our souls shut down. Elsa, a 78-year-old millionaire, knew this script well. Confined to a wheelchair after a stroke, surrounded by comfort but immersed in silence, she no longer expected anything, until a street kid reached out his hand and said something impossible. "Take my hand and walk again." It sounds crazy, right? But that's when everything started to change. A simple touch, an impossible phrase, and a reaction that not even the doctors could explain. This is not just a story of overcoming adversity after a stroke. It's about transformation through faith, about justice and love that break down blood barriers, about an adoptive mother who found meaning again, and a boy who carried more than hunger in his eyes. He carried destiny. If you think miracles don't happen, you might need to think again. Because this moving story will show you that sometimes the impossible is just waiting for someone to believe. And when that happens, even those who haven't walked in 5 years get up and walk again. Elsa's routine was as timed as it was solitary. Every Sunday there she was, sitting in her wheelchair, carefully pushed by Vera, her faithful caregiver who for 20 years had done more than just work. She was her companion, her voice, and her patience. Even with all the fortune that the elderly millionaire had accumulated throughout her life, there was one thing that money could not buy: the will to live. Since her stroke 5 years earlier, Elsa had not been able to walk. Life had become waiting for something that not even she knew what. The scene was always the same: Parque das Mangueiras, with its smell of popcorn and wet grass, almost a repeated scene. Elsa would sit on the same bench, look at the same lake, and respond with a monosyllabic yes to Vera's attempts at conversation. It was a silent pause in time, where the body was present, but the soul seemed to have gone to breathe somewhere else. No party, no grandchild in her arms, no new plans, and yet she remained there, firm, as if waiting for a true miracle, until he appeared. A skinny street urchin with dirty clothes and a look no one expected to see in a child. It wasn't just hunger, it was a strange intensity, as if he knew more than he was saying. He stopped in front of the two of them, looked at Elsa, and brought with him a kind of presence that changed the air around them. It was the first chapter of a moving story, and no one there, not Vera, not Elsa, imagined what that look would be capable of awakening, and he hadn't even said a word, yet. "Take my hand and walk again." The sentence fell like thunder in the middle of a calm evening. Elsa was paralyzed, not by the stroke, but by the fright. Who was that street kid to say something so absurd? Vera stood up in a rush, ready to push him away, but the boy had no expression of danger. On the contrary, there was firmness in his voice, a disconcerting calm, as if he knew exactly what he was doing. And then it happened. A shiver started in Elsa's feet and went up, like an electric current awakening something forgotten. The big toe on her right foot, which had been immobile for 5 years, twitched. It was almost invisible, but inside her it was like running a marathon. Vera noticed and knelt down, asking if she had felt anything. Elsa didn't answer, just looked at the boy, who smiled and disappeared into the trees, leaving behind a certainty that was impossible to ignore. Something had changed. In the days that followed, the true miracle continued to echo. In the office, tests indicated unexpected activity in the nerves. The doctors tried to explain it cautiously. Perhaps a delayed neurological response, perhaps an illusion of the brain. But Elsa already knew. She felt it. And when she asked to return to physical therapy, something new was pulsing through her. It wasn't idle hope. It was our union with faith, with the body, and with something much greater than science. Because sometimes all we need is to believe again. After that day in the park, Elsa was never the same. For the first time in years, she slept with her eyes open with hope. She had experienced something no doctor had predicted and no medicine had provided, a sign that life still pulsed within her. But there was a restlessness. Who was this street boy who had touched her so deeply? And why had he disappeared as if he had never existed? Determined, Elsa had discreet posters printed, describing the boy, placed in squares, traffic signs and even bus stops. She searched shelters, churches and NGOs, but it was like looking for a needle in a haystack. And worse, a needle that didn't want to be found. Meanwhile, the physiotherapy progressed steadily. She could already move her leg, stand up with support, and her previously dull gaze now carried a flames of transformation through faith. Even without finding the boy, he was there for her in everything, in her exercises, in her sighs, in the small advances of the day. It was as if he had left an unfinished mission, and now she had to complete the rest alone. Every time she got up from her chair with effort, she felt like she was honoring that touch, that phrase. Elsa had already understood. The reunion would not only be with the boy, but with the woman she had left behind. The news came unexpectedly, like everything else in that story. Vera received a call from a nurse friend. A street kid had been admitted to the hospital, unconscious, injured and unidentified. Elsa didn't think twice. She ordered the car to be prepared and left with her heart racing. When she arrived, she recognized the boy immediately. It was him, his eyes still closed, his face bruised, but the same silent presence that she would never forget. He was weak, injured, and showed clear signs of abuse. He had bruises, dehydration, and a deep cut on his head. The doctor said he was lucky. Someone had found him near a trash can and called for help. Elsa looked at him and understood, without needing words, that this could not happen again. He will never return to the streets again, she said, with the firmness of someone who had already been saved by that boy. There began not only a physical recovery but emotional reunion. She stayed by his bedside until late, holding his hand as if it were a silent vow. The image was touching, an elderly millionaire who had barely moved before, now strong and determined, caring for a boy with no one else. It was the perfect reversal of roles. He had made her walk, she would help him stand in the world. And even without saying it, Elsa knew. This was not just gratitude, it was the beginning of unexpected adoption, the kind that destiny writes in firm handwriting. As soon as Davy was discharged, Elsa took him home, not on impulse, but out of certainty. She prepared a simple, clean room with a soft bed, new towels, and even a toothbrush with an embroidered name. It was the kind of care that only adoptive mother, from the heart, he offered without asking for anything in return. Vera, even with her reservations, understood the gesture. In that house now lived more than a rich lady. A new purpose lived. Davy, suspicious, still slept with one eye open and the other closed, but little by little he let his guard down. One day, he sneaked out early to buy bread with his change from the bus. He wanted to give back, to show that he cared. When he came back, startled because he had left the window open, he got a fright and a tight hug from Elsa. It was the beginning of a bond that no longer needed an explanation. Justice and love were there in the simplest gesture, but not everyone understood. When Elsa told her children that she had brought the boy home, the shock was immediate. Luciana called it madness, Marcello, irresponsibility. For them, the inheritance was at risk. After all, children reject mother when they feel that control is slipping away. But Elsa, with the serenity of someone who has survived loneliness and a wheelchair, responded firmly, "You are worried about what you will lose. I am looking at what I have just gained." Luciana did not accept it silently, driven by pride and perhaps fear of losing control of her mother's fortune. She decided to take action. She hired a ruthless lawyer, Caio Barbosa, known for turning family conflicts into legal scandals. She filed a request for interdiction, claiming that Elsa suffered from mental confusion, influenced by a street boy with dubious intentions. The narrative was cruel, but strategically articulated, and worst of all, it began to gain ground. It didn't take long for the media to catch wind of the case. Sensationalist headlines took over the internet. Millionaire elderly woman wants to donate fortune to unknown boy. Family accuses child of manipulation. Davy saw his own face appear on the television as if he were a villain in a soap opera, and he froze. Elsa, even though hurt by the exposure, remained calm. She knew that the game was far from over and that often love needs to go through the mud before it can blossom. Inside the house, the atmosphere was tense. Outside, cameras, reporters, and microphones. But Elsa stood her ground, literally. She was no longer the quiet woman she once was. Now, she was adoptive mother with purpose. And with her was a boy who, even though he was hurt by the world's rejection, still had hope in his eyes. If the world wanted to turn this into a dispute over inheritance, she would make it a fight for family redemption, until the end. The courtroom was packed, but Elsa entered as if she were walking down a hallway of memories, with her head held high and her steps firm. The medical examination had been hastily scheduled as part of the interdiction process. The experts asked her difficult questions, logic tests, and cognitive assessments, and she answered everything with firmness and even a touch of humor. Here, she was not an elderly millionaire defending her fortune. She was a woman fighting for the right to love and choose who she called her son. Meanwhile, David was also called to testify. Alone, in a shelter, eyes downcast, heart racing. But when asked if he knew what adoption was, he replied, "It's when someone chooses to love you forever." The sentence cut through the air in the room like a hot knife through butter. When asked if Elsa was manipulating him, he simply said, "She is my mother." There was nothing to argue. The prosecutor lowered her eyes. The judge sighed, and the silence spoke louder. The turning point came when Elsa's lawyer presented evidence of falsification by Luciana. Altered medical documents, forged dates, emails compromising Caio Barbosa. The lie fell apart. The judge dismissed the interdiction process and authorized the adoption to continue. There was no longer talk of fortune, but of justice and love, of ties that go beyond blood. And at the end of that day, Elsa looked at David and whispered, "Now no one can take you away from me." It was an ordinary day when Elsa, rummaging through an old box of photographs, found a forgotten image. 3 employees in the old kitchen of the house, and in the center, a dark, thin woman with braids and a downcast gaze. On the back, written in pen, like 2009, a name that sparked something in his chest. Upon investigating, he discovered that Cedar, a former trusted cook, had become pregnant at the end of that year and disappeared without a trace. The puzzle was beginning to come together on its own. Cedar's niece confirmed what Elsa never imagined. The boy she had taken in, called her son, was in fact your grandson of the heart, the biological son of a woman who served the house faithfully. David had been born in secret, given to a street acquaintance, and then lost in the shadows of the city. When he heard the truth, the boy was silent, trying to absorb it. Then he looked at Elsa and said, "She is my mother, but so are you." The emotional reunion, the relationship between David and Cedar, was made up of long hugs, silent tears, and a painful question. "Why did you leave me?" The answer was honest. "Because I thought it was the best thing I could do." Elsa, in the background, watched, not with jealousy, but with gratitude. That didn't diminish the love they had built. Quite the opposite. It showed that destiny, even capricious, knows where to place each piece. And now, the unexpected adoption made even more sense. With peace finally rebuilt inside and outside her home, Elsa decided to turn gratitude into action. She founded the Children's Institute Maus que Caminham. Walking Hands was a space for boys and girls who, like Davi, had gone unnoticed by the world. She wanted to offer food, clean beds, psychologists, but above all, a presence. This was not just a project, it was a legacy. And who took care of every detail alongside her? Marcelo, her son, who had returned with humility and open hands. The inauguration was simple but symbolic. No fancy stuff, no rehearsed speeches. Davi, wearing a dress shirt and with a folded piece of paper in his pocket, went up on stage and read a text that made everyone hold their breath. He said that before her disappearance, his biological mother had told him that one day he would meet a woman with a look of hidden pain, and that when he saw her, he should hold her hand and say, "Walk again." That's when everyone understood that true miracle has a name, a face, and a purpose. Marcelo became a regular volunteer at the Institute. Vera took care of the kitchen with her impatient humor and soft heart. Aides, now part of the routine, baked cakes and helped with parties. And Elsa? Well, Elsa was there, whole, present, walking steadily, as if she had never seen a wheelchair before. That place was more than a shelter. It was a place of peace, family redemption. A second chance that multiplied into dozens of others, every day. At the end of it all, life went back to the same park where it all began. Elsa sat on the same bench, now standing and with firm steps, next to Davy. He ran, laughed, threw popcorn to the pigeons, and always came back to hold her hand, like that day. The phrase that had once been a miracle was now a routine full of affection. "She is my mother, but so are you." And there was no contradiction in that. There was only love. The story of Elsa and David is not about charity. It is about overcoming after stroke, about allowing yourself to start over even when everything seems definitive, about not accepting silence as a sentence, and mainly about looking beyond appearances. Because a street boy may actually be the missing link of a lifetime, and an elderly millionaire, no matter how much you have, you may still need a hug to get back on your feet, inside and out. If you've come this far, it's because something in this story touched you. Maybe you have someone to forgive. Maybe you need to get up from an invisible chair that's holding you back, or maybe you're waiting for a miracle that's already knocking on your door. All you need to do is say, "Take my hand and walk again." And when that happens, don't doubt. Because sometimes the impossible just needs a look that believes. Now tell me, how many times have you held back from reaching out for fear of looking foolish or weak or getting hurt again? How many incredible people have passed through your life, but you weren't ready to see them? Maybe today is the day to change that. Maybe your miracle won't come with lights or cameras, but with a simple gesture, with someone who just needs to be noticed. Because sometimes all a heart needs is to be invited to walk again. If this story touched you, share it with someone who also needs a new beginning. Comment below, do you believe that miracles still happen? I really want to read your answer. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and leave a like. This helps bring these transformative stories to even more people. In the end, we're all a little bit like Elsa and David. At some point, we need someone to believe in us. So now it's your turn. Who will you invite to walk again?